Hello, you're listening to Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast, presented by Brandon Elliott. This show will be going over all aspects of real estate investing and is intended to educate, motivate, and prepare you to take action on your first or next real estate investment. For more information, please visit BrandonElliottInvestments.com. Thank you for listening and enjoy.
Welcome back, everyone, to Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast. I am your host, Mr. Brandon Elliott. I'm super excited to have this gentleman on today. Coming from North Carolina, he's been in the game for the last 8 years. What's really cool and very interesting is started off with wholesaling after college, but transitioned into taking property himself, getting rental properties, and found himself investing in properties that came with Section 8. So turned it into a whole successful model of having 400 plus doors at this point, but a huge majority of it, I would probably say like 75, 80% of it is actually like Section 8. So he's teaching it now. He's helping out more people and just super excited to have him on. Tom Cruz. What a name too. I love that.
Oh yeah. Easy to remember. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. For anybody out there that doesn't know more about your background, your history, who you are, do you mind just diving into, first off, how you got the name maybe? And then
That's pretty easy. I was actually born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. My dad's Brazilian, so I grew up there for 5 years before we moved to the US. And my last name obviously my dad's last name was Cruz, and they wanted a name that you could say in Portuguese and English the same, and Tom it was. So in 1988, Tom Cruz wasn't that big of a household name, so it wasn't it was kind of a coincidence more than anything. But yeah, I mean, now it's very helpful. Investors remember my name. Tenants remember my name. So it turned out to work out pretty good.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you live in North Carolina now. Basically, When did you actually come from Brazil? You said 5?
Yeah, I was 5 years old. My parents moved us to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I grew up in Chapel Hill, ended up going to college at University of North Carolina at Wilmington, about 2 hours away from home. Studied and majored in finance, graduated, and got started with real estate.
Why real estate?
Yeah, that's a good question. I fell into it, man. Right around college, I bought my first condo to live in, and I did an FHA loan. I, put my little 3% down at the time. I had a marketing side hustle, so I was, funding it that way. And after about a year, I lived in it, and completely by happenstance, I didn't know about the 1 year rule about being able to rent after that. It just happened. I bought a dog, a big Doberman Pinscher, and my HOA at the condo wouldn't let me have them, so I had to buy a primary residence. So again, I'd saved up a bunch of cash from marketing and hadn't really started wholesaling at that point. Bought a single family property and I couldn't sell my condo. It was right after '08. It was, the values were down and I was upside down. So I decided to rent the property, and same day I found an amazing tenant. They had lived there for years actually after. I was making $500 a month in cash flow from it. At the time, I didn't even know what cash flow was. I was just pumped that I was making $500 a month, where I was killing myself for a client doing, web design at $500 a month. Here I am every month, first of the month, my PayPal, I had them on a PayPal subscription, a Venmo subscription, and they would just manually send that payment every month. And that was it. I got hooked. I started buying condos. And that's kind of where I got into wholesaling. I researched more into real estate, learned more about how I could get into it. I saw wholesaling was the cheapest way, easiest way in. So I went all in on that. Obviously I had a marketing background, so that made it easier for me to generate inbound leads. I just set up HubSpot, set up some bandit signs, set up, a couple $100 a month Facebook campaign, and we buy houses in Wilmington, North Carolina. So and from that point on, I was living as lean as I could. Every dollar went to down payments, and I built up good relationships locally with community banks. I maxed out my 10 residential loans. You can do 10 per person. And I went that way. I started with condos. It was the cheapest option, $60,000, $70,000. I can get a 3-bedroom condo. I wasn't doing Section 8 at this time. I was just renting them privately. I was making my little $400 or $500 per unit. I was very excited. And it adds up from there. It adds up.
Yeah. So I love that. And anybody, when you just mentioned the traditional loans, for anybody out there that doesn't know what that is, like for Freddie and Franny, government backed, that's the traditional way. You'll get the best interest rates and so forth. So at that point, there's still more options, but you definitely want to maximize that in the beginning, which is awesome. I'm curious about your financial, college background history. Do you believe any of that actually had any type of effect on you or something that you utilize today?
No, not at all, man. I knew early on I was going to be an entrepreneur, which is bizarre. Neither of my parents are entrepreneurs. They're all, they work
Really?
9 to 5s and very stable and, middle class and had a great, upbringing. But they supported me with my entrepreneurship stuff. I mean, it started in middle school. I mean, I remember the moment when it hit. I sold my first Pokemon that I flipped for $100 out of YMCA after school. A Charizard holographic card. I'll never forget. Came into my mom's Toyota Camry after school. She thought I was selling drugs. And I was like, no, I sold Pokemon cards. I mean, I sold that one for 100 and a few other ones. So from that point on, I sold everything from paintball guns in high school. I'm still huge into paintball. And then eventually in college, I got into marketing, and then it transitioned into real estate. So I've already been, trying every model under the sun.
I love it. And so what year did you get started in real estate?
So I graduated college in 2010. I would say 12 was the first property that I bought. It was that first condo.
Okay, nice. And so your strategy, you started picking more or less on the side of condos at the time.
Correct. Because I lived in the condo. That was the first unit that I bought, like I said, with an FHA loan. So I already knew how it worked. And making $500 a month, that was on top of paying a $250 a month, COA, condo association dues. And we would have a hurricane and shingles would fly off the building next door. And I'm stuck paying assessments for the whole complex. So I was like, this is for the birds. Like I'm sick of doing this model. So after about 6 or 7 condos, I switched over to single family. This was a big shift because I'm paying a lot more. I went a little bit further upstream. I was buying $170,000 to $190,000 houses. So 20% down at the time. And that was 30, 40 grand. It took me a few months to save that up for marketing and, reinvesting condo cash flow. So I was like, that's kind of where I had the light bulb moment onto the next step. And I can get into that unless you have any more questions.
So before we jump into that next step, what did that look like? You basically started off picking up as many properties as you could within a short time frame. So you maxed out the 10 and then you started focusing on wholesaling?
So I was doing wholesaling during that time. That's how I was funding the deals. So I had 3 income sources. I would do 1 or 2 wholesale deals per month, through, like I said, inbound leads that I was getting. And then I would be snowballing that cash flow from the condos that I'd be getting, from that. And then I still was doing my marketing thing. And that was throwing off, $5,000 to $7,000 a month from just doing web designs, SEO, pay-per-click. So I would be combining that income every month and either saving it, or I would be, buying a condo up until the point that I started getting single families. And then that's what I was saying. Now, instead of maybe getting 1 every 2 months, it was like 1 every 4 months. It slowed down a lot because I was buying a lot higher end properties.
Sure. Okay. And then the rents on those, what were those typically?
Yeah. With the condos, I was getting between $1,050 and maybe $1,100. They were mostly 3-bedroom condos. The 2 bedrooms at the time were going for like $900, $950. And I was putting 20% down on $70,000, condos. So I was financing 56 grand.
Yeah, that's the 1, 2, and 3% rule. Like you're well in there.
Yeah. It was 1.5 to 1.7 normally. So I was cash flowing that. And then I started doing the single family. After 3 or 4 of them, I was just drained. I mean, I had no cash, I was starting at 0 every month. And I said, there's got to be a better way to this. So I got the idea because I was looking online all the time, back in at this point, 2013, it's already been probably a year and a half since I started. And I decided to go lower stream. And I bought my first $55,000 property in downtown Wilmington. Okay. And it was rented already for $1,350. It was a 3-bedroom, 1 bath. It was built in 1920s. Not the best part of downtown, obviously, for $55,000 house. The landlord was like 85 years old. He was done with it. He'd owned it forever. He'd already had it paid off, obviously. So I was like, the house looked in good shape. I walked it. Everything was fine. The tenant was cool. So I closed on it. And the day after I closed on it, he calls me and he's like, hey, we need to switch you over to accept Section 8 deposits. And I was like, what do you mean Section 8 deposits? He's like, how do you think I was getting $1,350 a month on a rent on a $55,000 unit in the middle of downtown? Yeah. I'm an idiot at this point, right? I mean, I had some units, I figured some stuff out, but all I heard was bad things about Section 8, like everyone else, right? Sure. So I was like, oh man, like I am in for a world of hurt if anything I heard has been accurate. Yeah. But it turned out to be amazing. I switched over security deposit. The tenant was disabled. She was elderly. So Section 8 paid 100% of that. So $1,350 came directly into my bank account every month. Wow. And that was my second light bulb moment. I was like, okay, well, here we go. Now I got to do more of these, because at the time I put $12,000 down. It was way less than my $40,000 or $35,000 that I was used to. And I was making more cash flow from a percentage and a cash perspective. I was making way more. So I at that point, it was just rinsing and repeating. I figured out the model. I figured out inspections. That's the big thing with Section 8. Yeah. I figured out where everyone screws up with Section 8, which is screening. Everyone
Yes.
assumes that since the rent is guaranteed, that the tenant is guaranteed to be amazing. Not the case.
Not the case at all. Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to. So if you think about it, Section 8 is just a payment method. A tenant is a tenant. They both want to live in your unit. They're both going to pay you rent. Your regular market rate tenant might pay you with a check every month. They're paying you with a direct deposit from the federal government. So as long as you're able to streamline that process, being able to scale is a whole lot easier.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think for a step-by-step for the listeners out there, I think it's incredibly important. We have certain tenants that are on Section 8 as well. And we've had ones that could care less about Section 8. Like they're okay with being kicked out. And then there's other ones that will do everything in their power to make sure that they're not because they need it. I was personally raised on Section 8, so I know the process, and I remember the inspections. I remember but it is a certain type of class that you need to just make sure that you're getting the cream of the crop, right?
Yeah. And that's another big place where people make mistakes is the first people that come up with $2,000 and wave the cash in their face. Oh, I'll take it, So those are the people you would purposely avoid. Yeah. So that's what I teach in the course, and essentially the education I put together, because I got burned a lot of times doing things like that. Oh my God, I got the property. I have a mortgage coming up. It's vacant. What do I do? Just throw a tenant in there. And then 2 months later, the cops are calling every day. Neighbors are upset. Everyone's mad. And now you're stuck with an eviction. So it's a lot of learning.
Me personally, how we screen our tenants is very similar to how a bank would screen us as we are trying to get a mortgage from them. But I'm curious, do you have a step-by-step of how you normally, do your screening?
Yeah. We go a few extra steps past that. So we do, first of all, is eviction. If they fail eviction, regardless of the reason, it's not.
If they've ever had one in the past.
They've ever had one in the past. Yeah. They're gone. And then we go to background, then any serious felonies, well, pretty much every felony is serious, but any violent or sexually oriented felonies, then they're gone. If they had, a few DUIs and they had a felony for it, depending on the rest of the credit, we'll look at it. We don't just wholesale disqualify all felons. And then we go into credit. Obviously, Section 8 is still paying their rent, but if they have a portion, like it or not, credit does say a lot about your ability to repay and, keeping your promises. It's not, a lot of people don't like that, but it's true. If you go on there,
Now, when it comes down to credit, is there certain things that you'll let slide? Like me personally, I'll let medical bills slide because it's very notorious for, people to let those or whatever it may be. Student loans, sometimes I'll let that slide. Auto and credit cards is something that I don't want to see late payments. I don't like any repossessions for cars. It's kind of in the same category as an eviction for me, because I look at it as a lot of people treasure their cars just as much as they do their homes.
Right.
If they're okay with letting that being taken, then it's not a good idea, right?
Yeah. We're a little bit stricter. So with credit as it comes, medical will definitely let slide, especially depending on the age. If they got it 2 years ago and they haven't paid anything on it or even made, an attempt to pay it, then we'll consider that. But foreclosures, bankruptcies, repossessions, it might as well be an eviction. Yep. The only reason I say that is because they've had so many opportunities to correct it before it gets that bad. Especially like you said, if they don't care about their car getting repossessed, they're not going to care about your house getting repossessed through an eviction, And then it says credit, eviction, background, and then we'll do home visits. My property managers will go to their house and see exactly how the condition of their current house.
Their current one, where they're
living currently. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and do you ask to walk through or the property? Yeah.
If they get past the initial screening, say, great, we need to schedule a home visit just to see the current condition of your existing property, and they're taken back. And we normally do it, within 2 or 3 days. And obviously they try to, clean up and for the most part, but certain things, smoke, smell, dog urine, holes in the wall, multiple abandoned cars in the driveway, you can't hide that. So it's very telling. But that's one of the big things that we'll do.
Wow, that is gold right there. I've never heard that. And I bet you that saves you so much.
Oh, it's if they take care of their existing house, they're going to take care of your house. Because you can only go so much on landlord references. Landlords all the time will lie to you and say, oh yeah, these are great tenants. The amount of times that I've had a tenant that I've done, get them out of my property. Yeah. They're great. They pay every month, no damage. Yeah. So, you can't go off of that. And then of course we check, employment, and we do check pay stubs. And so it's pretty thorough, and it takes an hour. My property manager will go out to their house. If they're not available, if they refuse to do it, even just the exterior. I mean, if the lawn is, waist high, if there's a bunch of junk cars and, they're hoarding in the backyard, forget it. We're not going to deal with it.
Now, when it comes down to jobs, I have so many people that call me up on a regular basis and like, yeah, I got a job, and it's a month old and I was like, cool. So what did you do before that? And there's a huge gap. And so I always want to see at least 1 year with the same job for consistency and so forth. Do you guys have certain restrictions?
So with Section 8, not as much as far as job employment, because I mean, most of the people that are doing that are jumping from job to job. So, and also it comes down to what Section 8, the first question that I'll ask them is say, hey, look, are you currently on Section 8? Yes. What's your rent? $1,200. How much do you pay? $500. That's a red flag. I'll then, at that point, I take into a lot more consideration their credit, their job history, because that means that they're going to be, when they come over to us, it's going to be the same thing. They're going to have a huge percentage that they have to pay out of the total rent.
Usually that's because of them
They're
making,
money.
They're making money. Yeah.
Right. But if they have a sketchy credit history, or if there's other, kind of factors that roll into it, we look at the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, most of the time it's, part-time at employment. They don't have a ton of hours, and Section 8's paying 90% of their rent. And that's what we love to see, because then the risk is pretty low. We just have to make sure they're a good tenant. Yeah,
no, that makes sense. Do you accept dogs and so forth?
Yes, but we just have like heavy security or heavy deposit, non-refundable. We take $500 per dog. And normally it's okay. We haven't had many issues with that. We also do a lot of inspections throughout the year. So if it gets bad, we just, have them get rid of it.
Yeah, gotcha. Cool. Well, I love that. Is there anything else that you would recommend to the listeners if they are just getting started with Section 8 that could be, very detrimental when it comes down to their checklist?
Yeah, the only person in this entire equation that matters is the Section 8 inspector. You have to treat them essentially like a god, a deity, however you want to, whatever they say goes. If you argue with them, they're going to make your life hell. It's to the point where when we first got started, I was having my property managers bring them Dunkin' Donuts and a coffee to the inspections. So they loved us. Every single time we had an inspection, we got to the point where we would fail an inspection because of something, minor. And he'd be like, oh, don't worry, I'll mark you down as passed. Send me a picture. I'll mark it later. So when you have those relationships with inspectors, it makes the whole process a whole lot easier. Now with COVID, they don't do in-person inspections. But I know other landlords that are on Section 8 and they're like, oh yeah, X or Y inspectors give me a bunch of hard times. So I was like, all I do is I get my tenants to take pictures. We don't even go out there anymore. The tenants, I'll have them take a picture of each room, underneath the sinks, all the things that they look for, send it back over to us. I forward it to them in just one nice zip file. They review it, they pass it, we're good for another year.
Wow.
So I'm hoping they stay on that, because that'll just make things, things very easy.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. We haven't had that much of a breeze through. Like our inspectors are still coming out, and there's always I feel like there's always something. Yeah. Because their job is to do something, right? They're not going, even if everything is box. They have to check something off. But yeah, we've built that relationship very strong, like you guys have, and they are always okay with, hey, take a picture of these minor things after it's installed or fixed, little things, and send it over and it's passed.
Yeah,
which has always been a blessing.
But that's really the big thing. And I also say on their first few units, make that relationship as the owner yourself. Don't on your first unit send a property manager, unless you're doing it virtually, then you have no control. But if you're doing it locally, just put a face to a name. It goes a long way with them. Yep.
That's so good. I love it.
And fix what they say. Nothing pisses them off more than them making a list and you ignoring it, and they come out to do a reinspection. That makes them irate, and then they'll just put you on their bad list.
Yeah. You don't want to be on the naughty list. Definitely want to stay on the good side.
Yeah, definitely.
I love that. Is there anything else that you would recommend for that checklist before we?
So as far as inspections, no. I mean, as far as marketing, we don't do much with marketing. We just let Section 8 know about it, and then they pretty much fill the unit for us. As far as just beginning in real estate in general, I would say the biggest thing that I run into, because I literally have hundreds of coaching calls per month, so I'm on the phone all the time. That's my big thing now is education about Section 8. And the biggest thing that I'm seeing is people are so stuck in these projections and pro formas. I'm like, look, man, it's a $60,000 house. You don't need this 10-page cash flow statement where you're estimating stamp values on how much you're going to stamp and pay in office expenses to cash flow. Buy the property, make show on a macro level that it cash flows, And then the rest is easy. It's like going to college, going to the course and then never applying it. You know, you can only learn so much in school by sitting there and just learning and seeing spreadsheets. So I would say don't get stuck in analysis paralysis, put something under contract, you know, after you do your due diligence, and then just go from there, because the rest falls into place. After you buy your first unit, it's pretty easy. You're just copying and pasting again, you know, as many times as you can.
I always tell it to a lot of our students that after your third deal, you should really have things down. You're going to have all the little jitters out.
You'll have your team on. Yeah. You have a property manager, you have a closing attorney, you have an inspector, you have an agent, everything falls into place after. You're right. I would say 3 units is a good number, but after the first unit, you at least know what to expect for your future ones.
Exactly. That is so good. Cool. So I want to talk about funding in a second, but I also know that, you know, you started off with condos, you jumped into single family houses afterwards. And I know you stayed around there for a little bit, but you also started getting into smaller residential, like multifamily. And I wanted to talk about that. Like, where was that transition? Why was it just, it popped up on your desk and you're like, hey, let's get it?
I remember exactly when it happened. It's probably around 25 units. At that point, I was having enough cash flow where I was buying multiple units per month. And I was already now talking to friends that were wanting to invest. And it came out of necessity. I remember distinctly going on to realtor.com, looking at every property under $100,000, and I had them all under contract. All of them. It was like 9 of them, all of them under contract. So I was like, well, shit, like, what do I do now? You know, there's no inventory. That's never happened to me. So I started looking outside of the single family filter. I went multifamily. I saw duplexes, triplexes, quads. I made a lot of mistakes there.
Like what?
I made a lot of mistakes with buying units, for example, that weren't semi-metered. I bought a quadplex one time and it was all on 1 meter. And I got stuck paying power, water, gas. And when they're not paying for it, they don't care. They're going to, in the summer, keep it running, you know, run up the water, the power. You'll get $1,200 power, and you can't do anything about it. You know, you can't have them split it because they're all going to argue about who paid for what. And it's in your name. You know, you can't put it in either name. So I quickly got rid of that. But
that over time, have you been able to?
We've done in our municipality here in Wilmington. It's rough because the water company won't honor your sub-meter. So if I went and install a third-party meter, they won't read it. You have to go out there and read it, and then you have to send it to them. They'll do the billing calculation. It's just not worth it. So we just don't buy them. I know in some other places it's better, but right now it's awful.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that, and that's a real big key factor right there, because a lot of people, they don't look into like the city municipality of like what is truly allowed, needed, how easy certain things are, or how difficult. Like San Diego, man, permits for damn near anything right now is
I can imagine
taking forever. Yeah.
So and that's the same thing here. I mean, you're waiting weeks for new construction or for remodels, and I mean that's why I never got into flips. I've always been, you know, cash flow. Predictable income. And then when I learned about Section 8 and these other subsidies, there's a bunch of other subsidies too that I'm involved with. It just works so much better. Last year in 2020, I never lost a night of sleep. You know, I always had my debt service covered. I know people that, you know, got stuck with Airbnbs that they couldn't rent, and they were arbitraging it, paying all these, you know, crazy rents. People that had beach houses that they had $8,000 mortgages on their $3 million beach house, and now they're tenants to rent. Even in middle grade, you know, people that were renting out $250,000 houses and barely getting by with the rent. The second that unemployment spikes, or you have any type of interruption in the economy, you're so susceptible, you're stuck.
And there's a lot right now, right? There's a lot of ups and downs with the market. So, you know, God forbid what's going to be tomorrow. So I really do love your approach. Are you getting any type of distressed properties at all? Are you doing any type of light rehabs, or everything is good to go?
No, I mean, there are some light rehabs. I mean, there's some units where I usually max out between 5,000 and 7,000 into what I'll put into a unit. If it needs more than that, generally I'm not buying it. You know, I like the curb appeal, but if it needs to be painted, I'll spend $1,500 on. And I'm also buying smaller properties. I'm not buying any 2,000 square foot properties. So turning them, getting them ready is a lot cheaper, a lot easier. But that's the extent, is getting it ready for Section 8 inspection, making it look presentable, and that's it.
Is there a certain age of the house that you like to stick with now, or something that you noticed over the times that like, hey, I don't want to go back to these years anymore?
Not really. I would say over 30% of my portfolio, the units are over 100 years old.
Yeah.
So a third of them. The thing with that is that everything's been redone. You know, there's new HVACs, there's new roofs. I mean, the way they built those houses back then is insane. I mean, the structure, the frame. The only thing that really falters sometimes is Yeah. It's just really good. The doors are still in one piece, solid wood doors. It can be foundation. You have piers that, are leaning over and you have to do some foundation work. But again, 1,000 square foot house, maybe a few $1,000 of foundation work. It's never exorbitant, but
a couple steel beams in the basement and we're good to go.
Yeah. Jack it up.
I love it. Cool. So let's talk about funding for a second. Cause I mean, bro, you have 400 doors at this point, that's not cheap, even if you are cash flowing like crazy. So how the heck are you doing it?
Yeah. So after I started getting to my caps inventory wise locally, I started reaching out to partners.
That's like 25 doors, 25,
30 doors is when I started seeing like pushback, and I refused to go over 100, 110,000. I didn't want to, stretch this model at 130, 150K. So I was like, I got to buy more. The only way to do that is either buy in bulk from, bigger investors or go out of city. My whole team was in Wilmington. I didn't want to go out of city. So I started partnering. I had a friend that I go to Cars and Coffee with all the time. He owns a labor and temp company. And he's like, yeah, man, I showed him my cash flow. I had a track record at this point, so it made it a lot easier. I was like, look, dude, I'm making $500 or $600 per door guaranteed. I have a property management team at the time. At the time, I only had one property manager full time. I didn't have a company. I used my own person. And here are the cash flows, here are the audited statements, whatever you want to see. I just need like $500,000. And he was like, okay. And that was it. It was a lot easier. The way I structured that deal was he put the down payment down and I did the financing. Because keep in mind at the time I had all these relationships with these banks because I've been having to cobble together this financing. Because as you've run into, I'm sure one bank will be like, we'll give you 5 houses, or one bank will give you, 300,000 in limits. They all limit you because none of them want a ton of exposure to one person, right?
Yep.
So at this point, the way that I got, 3 houses with SunTrust, 5 houses with a credit union, 2 houses with some local podunk bank. And then I just was able to make all these different loans work.
Yeah.
Commercial loans, portfolio loans, residential loans. I still have my original FHA loan from my first condo that I was renting out. So I had to make it work. So when I went back to him and we found a portfolio, I think it was around $2 million. It was 21 or 22 units. It was right under 100,000 a door. And I said, look, these are going to cash flow. The guy that is selling them is moving out of state. He's motivated. It's a 1031 deal. Their agent was dumb enough to tell me that it was a 1031. So I knew. Right. So
you got leverage at that point because they need to sell. They're locked in with the time restriction. Yep. And
at the time, there wasn't a ton of investors out spending $2 million on single family houses. They're buying multifamily, right? So I was like, we have to buy this. So
and all you need to do is lock it in contract and start playing with the time. And there's a lot of pressure on them at that point.
Exactly. So on $2 million, we gave him a $20,000 due diligence or earnest money. It went hard in, I think, 3 weeks. Okay. And he gave me the $500,000 and I secured the financing. We put whatever that comes out, 20%, 18% down. Sure. And then most of them were rented, but they're non-Section 8. And then there were some units that were rough. I mean, we had to it was all or nothing deal. He wasn't subdividing all the crap out of it. It was very much all or nothing. Okay. So we put $400,000 down on it. And then $100,000 we used for closing costs and then for repairs and reserve. That's what it was. And then, my job was to stabilize it. I dealt with the management of it. I hired another property manager at that time. We started occupying the units. Any of the tenants that were moving out that were already there, we would go ahead and reoccupy them with Section 8. And then we just continued doing it that way. We did a couple more deals like that after 6 months, and he saw what I did. Because after 6 to 8 months, they were all Section 8. I mean, it was 20 units, probably averaging around at the time $1,200 a door. It added up, it was.
So you stabilized 20 something units within 6 months.
Yeah, between 6 to 8 months, because the ones that were month to month, we gave them instant 30-day notices if they weren't able to increase their rent, unless they were good tenants. If they were good tenants, we kept them. And then we gave them more time to either increase the rent or I had other properties in my portfolio that were vacant. So I let them move to another one. And maybe my partner only wanted Section 8, which I understood. He wanted that guarantee and the safety. So I understood that, but as you know, there's nothing more valuable than a good tenant. So I never get rid of good tenants.
Stay there forever.
Yeah,
we've had tenants right when we got started. I mean, so we're going on like 6 years at this point.
Yeah. So
once it's amazing.
I don't get rid of bad tenants. If they can, work with me, we'll give like a bump. Maybe $100 goes up every year or every 2 years. It doesn't matter. I work with them. So, anyways. Finally got them all stabilized within that 6 to 8 month period. It was mostly Section 8. Keep in mind, at the time, I think there was 8 vacant. So instantly, within the first couple of months, we were able to occupy those. the work that was needed on some of them was more than 7 or 10 grand. We had to definitely put some work into it, but all I did was just appreciate the portfolio. And from that point on, I understood the structure. I did a 60-40 split with cash flow. He brought all the cash and took all the risk on the front end. So I gave him 60% of this cash flow until he recouped his $500,000. And then I took 40%, and that included my management fee. So I was still making quite a bit. We split the equity 50-50. So whenever we would sell out or cash out, we would split it accordingly. And yeah, I did the management. He sat back. I wrote him a check every month, sent him a report. He was happy. And then he kept funding me. So he did some more deals. And then 2018, I had the biggest single deal, about 100 units with a different partner. That was 6.5 million. You can Google that. They did an article about it. It was the largest single family portfolio sale in the county ever. 100 units or I think 93 units at a time. I think it was like 84 structures. Some of them were duplexes. Yeah. And we bought it for 6.4 million. He put $1.1 million down, funded it, and we went from there. And I did the same thing. We repaired a lot of the units. We got very lucky on that deal. 3 weeks after we closed, Hurricane Florence hit the East Coast, and it flooded the entire region for 3 days. It just sat on top of us for 3 days. And at the time, some of the units in that portfolio were kind of sketchy. They should have been torn down at some point, but the previous landlord kept it up, and they weren't good bones. Some of the roofs were in really rough shape. It's just something that I wouldn't have kept, but they were insured under full replacement cost coverage with insurance. They were all DP2 policies.
So you just closed on this. You had great insurance on it, and
we grandfathered his insurance, and their agents never did any inspections. They never checked anything. So when we inherited it, we had all these units that might have been worth $40,000 for land, but they had full DP2 replacement costs at 125, 130. Wow. So, and I got a public adjuster involved, and oh my God, we did very well. So we just reinvested it. Yeah, we reinvested a bunch of that, improved all the properties, new roofs, new HVACs, new everything. And now we're doing, a ton more improvements, improving the value, and we were able to get good Section 8 tenants in there as well.
So for those properties that were those teardowns at that point that were flooded and really just torn up.
So the ones that were in really rough shape, yeah. What we did with those is we obviously no tenants could inhabit them. So we got rid of the tenants and either relocated them to another vacant unit. And then we repaired most of them. But
you did repair it.
We repaired some of them. Some of them we just left until we ended up selling. But the ones that could be repaired, it was not like mold or significant flood damage. It was more like wind-driven rain. So like a roof would partially blow off, water would get in, and we'd have to redo all the insulation and sheetrock. But we got a good contracting crew, and we're able to handle it that way.
Okay, I love it. Yeah. Are you doing refis on any of these properties after you add the value?
Yeah. So essentially, what I did was that's how I get my partners out. A lot of the partners were obviously silent partners. They weren't involved day to day with the operations, so it worked out really well. So my whole goal after about a couple of years was to build so much value, jack up the rent so high that it was forcing appreciation, along with the remodels that we did here and there. Yep. Do a cash out refi, offer my partner a deal he couldn't refuse, pretty much double his initial investment. And then I would take over. I would own all, 100 units by myself. And in some of them, it worked out really well because like back in 2017, 2018, when I was acquiring a lot of these, I had interest rates, back then were like 5.5%.
Sure.
So, last year or the year before, when I refied these at 3.5%, I was able to pretty much keep my debt service payment about the same, pull out enough cash to pay them all, and be out free and clear and just have all the units to myself. And they were super happy. They didn't care that I'm still going to be cash flowing twice as much because now I don't have to split it with anybody. But they got a big payout. So that's how it's a win-win. It keeps everybody happy. They don't want their little 10 or 15 grand every month. They'd rather get a big check and move on to their next project or reinvest with me. So that's what I've done. Recently, though, now with 400 units, I really don't need any partners. I'm self-funding all my own deals. If I want to buy something cash, I
get enough cash flow coming in now. That
now I took the training wheels off. Right? There's no other partners helping, but it was a really good learning experience. I learned how to structure deals. I learned how to put together LLCs and operating agreements and the whole hierarchy of it. I have my own property management company. So I had a holding company LLC. I had a management LLC, learned how to do profit loss, balance sheets, be able to report to investors. So yeah, it's super helpful.
So for motivational purposes, do you mind sharing, how much monthly cash flow is actually coming in at this point?
I don't care. I'll talk about any numbers you want, man. I love money. I love talking about money. So on 400 units, our average rent right now is around $1,275. So that puts it, I think, let me look at the last cash flow. I think we actually had, a good month is around $500,000. An average month is around 475. It fluctuates based on vacancy. So for example, this month, I think we were right at 482,000 is what we grossed as far as that. And we're operating on about 40% expense ratio. So we'll net about 60% of that. Keep in mind, some of these units are paid off. I don't have, not all of them are encumbered. I would say about probably 50 of those units are paid off. So that's just pure cash flow. Obviously, we have property taxes. We live in a state with a property tax here of peanuts. I mean, I pay on a 100,000 unit, maybe $700 per year on property tax.
Yep.
So
same thing in Ohio. It's very cheap, so it's very affordable.
Yeah. So on that 475, I don't know, probably net between 275 and 300,000 per month is a pretty comfortable net. And then we'll keep part of that in reserves. We do a lot of home warranties. So we don't have a huge CapEx budget because we make sellers buy warranties for us 2 to 3 years when we negotiate that in. And that covers HVAC. I haven't paid for an HVAC unit in probably 2 years.
And that's basically like a renter's insurance?
No, that's a homeowner's insurance or it's a warranty, home warranty.
Home warranty.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, for example, a company called 210 Home Warranty, you could pay $700 a year for it. And any major expenses that come up, even if it's a rental, they'll still cover it.
You said it was 210?
Yeah, 2-10 Home Warranty. That's the name of the company is 210. Weird name. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I like that. I definitely, that's a great tip right there. I mean, that makes things a hell of a lot more affordable for sure. Cool. Well, I want to talk about financing for a second and then some problems. You know, I'm sure at 400, you've done over 500 at this point, but 400. You act a lot more currently. Would love to hear about some problems. If you don't mind, as far as financing goes, though, you know, once you get over that 10 traditional properties, what is the best recommendations that you would give that you implemented and you saw the success with to get the lenders?
If I were to start over, man, I wouldn't have waited to 25, 30 properties. I would have gone straight to other people's money. And I think people underestimate how easy it is to really obtain other people's money. Everyone says OPM. But if you're sitting there with no units and you're like, well, how the hell am I going to get some other people's money? I can't even get enough money for my own thing, right? Sure. So if you really either wholesale your way to it, that's what I recommend. You know, once you get to 5 or 10 units, you don't need tons of units to provide a track record to investors. I would say 5 or 10. Like I said, if I were to do it over, I would still start looking for investors at around the 10 unit mark. At that point, LinkedIn is your friend. At that point, your personal network is your friend. Selling real estate as an investment is very easy. It's not some high risk startup that's an idea in your head that you don't even have, an MVP for. It's a physical product that they can go touch and put a lien on, and they know exactly what's going to happen with it. So as long as you can show them, hey, look, my name's Tom. I saw you on LinkedIn. We're local. Can I go buy you lunch? That's it. Especially if you're younger, most existing seasoned investors, I go in and have lunch at least once a week with different investors locally. I love talking about real estate, and they'll try to help you. So from that point on, I try to invest locally whenever I can, partner. At this point, I do need more cash for it to be worthwhile, just because so many units, so many LLCs, it just becomes a huge hassle. So like if someone comes up to me like, hey, I have 50 grand, do you want to invest with me? It's like, it wouldn't be worth us setting up the LLC to buy 2 houses with 50 grand, right? Yeah. But that's what I would have done differently is either do more seller financing. If you have 0 people in your network and you have nobody that can do OPM, go seller financing, go to the subject to loans, being able to take over people's mortgages. Both of those are good options. You offer a seller good terms, you throw them $5,000 or $10,000 on a $100,000 unit. Yeah. You don't have appraisals to deal with. You don't have, all the hoops you have to jump through with loan origination, DTI, all the other crap with banks. Yep. And you just work directly. The loan packet is 2 pages, a promissory note and an offer to purchase. And that's it.
Not that bad.
Yeah, it's not that bad. It's the easiest closing you'll ever have. And once you get to the closing table, you shake the seller's hand and you're done.
The cool part too is that, like you mentioned, your goal over time was to season these properties, make them perform, and then cash out everybody with a cash out refinance. Well, after about 2 years of, actually running all these doors as a business, any bank will see the numbers and everything else, treat it as a business and, give you, will qualify you a heck of a lot easier.
Oh yeah, and that's the name of the game is unit count. So even if obviously I very much advocate to make sure you cash flow. I hate it when people say, "Oh yeah, I'm breaking even on my property, but I'm building
I hate
equity."
it too. Yeah,
You're like, man, you're not in a business. Like no one goes into business to break even.
Equity and appreciation is icing on the cake.
Yeah.
By all means, go for it, but make sure you're cash flowing in between for sure.
If I'm going to speculate or gamble, we'll go to Vegas. It'll be a lot more fun. You won't at least remember it because this decision you're going to make, you're not going to want to remember because the first HVAC that goes out, the first tenant turnover goes out, you're stuck, and it sucks coming out of pocket. So that's definitely something that I talk about, but acquiring units responsibly and as fast as you can makes things a whole lot easier. Banks take you more seriously, lenders take you more seriously, hard money takes you more seriously, partners take you more seriously. Everyone takes you more seriously when you have 5 or 10 units minimum. Then it's like, okay, you're not a hobby with 1 or 2. You're actually taking it seriously. So
yeah, that's so good. And Tom, how old are you now?
I'm 33.
33. I love it, bro. Yeah, very inspiring.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, it's awesome. So problems, before we wrap this up in a few minutes. At this many doors, this many years in, you've had some problems. I'm sure you could definitely help out some of the listeners and avoid some of those. Anything off the top of your head that you would definitely, hey, don't make this same mistake I did?
Yeah, don't buy too big of a unit. Section 8 doesn't care about square footage, completely square footage agnostic. It's all about bedroom count. So if you get a 2-bedroom at 1,900 square feet and I get a 2-bedroom at 800 square feet, we're both getting paid the same, except your expenses are 4 times mine when the tenant moves out. Focus on building relationship with those lenders. Even if you don't have a huge income, even if you don't have units, talk to lenders, talk to them about, hey, look, I want to put together a term sheet. I want to buy my first unit. The more lenders, that was a big mistake that I made at the beginning was I was focusing on one, the bank that I was with at the time. And you'll realize no matter, even if you're in New York City or if you're in, middle of nowhere, Kansas, it's a small community in real estate, so if you get in with one lender and you get a good term sheet and then you can build a relationship with them, then it's a whole idea like, oh yeah, I spoke with John over here. Can you help me out with this next set of properties? They're not willing to, lend anymore. That was the problem that I did was I got stuck and it took me too long to realize that I need to start looking at other banks and kind of leveraging one at a time. So that's not really a problem, but something that I would consider strongly doing. Tenant screening, like I said at the beginning, don't skimp out on that. That will cause you more problems than anything. Don't force a deal. A lot of people are anxious to buy their first deal and they'll get into something just because they can and they have the money and they have the financing. Just don't do it. It's much better to be at 0 units and comfortable than have 1 unit and stressing out because you're not making any money on it.
Don't fall in love with it basically and don't get too emotional into it. Treat it as a business, but at the same time, don't overcomplicate it and literally take action.
That's another thing that people do is they'll overinvest into a Section 8 unit. The unit is going to be occupied for years. The tenant will be there for years. It doesn't matter if you put brand new LVP and $40 a square foot granite countertops. It's going to get wrecked over a decade. Wear and tear, it happens. Don't do that. The Corian countertop is going to get you the exact same amount of rent as the granite or the marble. So yeah, those are the big things. Inspections, make sure you're nice to the inspector. Make sure you follow their rules. Network with lenders as soon as you can. And don't force a deal, make sure it cash flows. And yeah, those are kind of the big things I can think offhand.
That's so good, man. Well, Tom, you are amazing, bro. Very inspiring.
Thanks,
you got the step-by-step and helping out so many people along the way. You have an educational course out there for Section 8 that you're helping people, mentoring them the whole process through. Do you mind just letting people know more about that and then how they can actually get a hold of you?
Sure. No, appreciate it. I have a course. It's a $5,000 video course. It includes coaching for 12 months directly with me. It's called Section 8, the number 8 formula.com. That's section8formula.com. You can book a call with me or someone on my team. We'll talk to you about your strategy, help you come up with essentially where you are, where you want to invest, come up with the strategy that's going to work best for you. And at that point, we'll send you video content. We have monthly Zoom calls just like this, like we're having now, where you can, ask me any questions that you want. And then I also have a Telegram group where you can DM me deals. Hey, look, I'm looking at this property. Can you help me look at it? It's still pretty small. I think we have like 120 members. We launched a few months ago. So it's still super intimate and easy to, one-on-one. I will be capping it until some more people drop off. Like I said, it's only 12 months. And you can also follow me on Instagram. It's T as in Tom, Cruz, Cruz, NC, like North Carolina, T Cruz NC. And I'm also pretty big on TikTok. I post content every day, free advice on Section 8, free advice on real estate in general, funny tenant stories. I have some crazy tenant stories that are on there. So yeah, you can follow me on there.
I love it. I love it, bro. Well, really, really excited to see like where you take this in the future, how many people you can actually help over time. And yeah, just really grateful for your time. Guys, make sure that you reach out to Tom first off, because it's just amazing content. You're definitely going to have some missing pieces after this that you're going to need to reach out to him. But with that being said, if you want to get a hold of me, you can always do so at Instagram. It's Brandon Elliott Investments. Otherwise, facebook.com/Brandon Elliott Investor. If you need any credit repair services done for you, you can always check out creditrepairmobile.com. And if you're looking to get educated in credit, understanding how the banks and lenders are judging you, how to fix your own credit very quickly, build up several 6 figures or even 7 figures in funding, and then being able to leverage it to purchase properties, automation stores for e-com, do hard money lending with your credit and so forth, start your own business, then you can check out creditcounselelite.com, see if you qualify on there for our mastermind group, creditcounselelite.com. And then as always, make sure that you hit the subscribe button for Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast. Greatly appreciate everybody's support. We got a ton of, I think we're over like 600 5-star reviews right now. So after listening to a few episodes, you get the newest notification every single Monday, being subscribed, leave a review, let us know how you guys feel about it. And we will see you on the very next one. Tom, once again, bro, appreciate you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for having me.
God bless, guys.
This has been another episode of Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast, brought to you by Brandon Elliott. For more information, please visit BrandonElliottInvestments.com. Also, please don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. Thanks again for joining. Until next time, God bless.